Hello guys, I'm back. Is it Monday already?
Bruh.
So, I opened my eyes yesterday and found myself lying in a puddle of some yellow liquid on the edge of the forest, shivering from the morning cold. Since the bottle in my hand was completely empty, I gathered the last remnants of my strength, sat down on the ground, which was covered with an ever-thickening layer of leaves, and for a good hour I silently observed the slowly fading morning stars. Yes, autumn is here, and that means it's time to get big, boys. These days, whenever I open the internet and type how to gain muscle in the search bar, I'm bombarded with videos about low volume, high intensity training, aka HIT training. It seems this has been the biggest trend in the fitness industry for over a year now, and you're kind of considered cool if you follow it. Now, of course, this reincarnation of Mentzer's and Yates' methods has split fitness experts like a family at a fucking Thanksgiving dinner after grandpa brings up politics or racism. On one side you have this cult of high intensity low volume dudes that would literally give you a sloppy toppy behind the squat rack if you mention Mentzer or Yates, and on the other side you have exercise scientists who would crucify you whenever you mention the idea of doing only one set. Volume is the game killer, Mike. So today, boys and girls, I give you something more valuable than a Taylor Swift concert ticket to a mentally unstable high school girl. My opinion on high intensity training. But before I start yapping, let's lay down the foundation for discussing this topic. Let's start with some facts. Moon landing was fake. 9/11 was an inside job. Now, every training program consists of three essential components: volume, intensity, and frequency. Now, imagine you're creating your video game character and you have 10 points that you can distribute across these three characteristics: volume, frequency, and intensity. If you didn't fail the first grade of elementary school, you know that you can't max out all of them. The more points you put into one, the fewer you'll have left for the other two. If you train with very high volumes, you won't be able to train very intensely and definitely not very frequently. I really hope you understand this because it will play an important role later. Let's move on. What is even considered low volume / high intensity training, or in this case, what would I consider it to be? Well, let's put it this way. Doing 1 to 2 sets per exercise and 4 to 5 sets per muscle group per session done to failure, or 0 reps in reserve if you prefer, while training every muscle group every 5 days or less is what I would call the beginning of low volume territory. Doing only 1 set per exercise beyond failure and training every muscle group only once per week, which is Mike Mentzer's method, is what I consider ultra low volume, and it almost deserves its own category. Like feminists when it comes to weight classes. And one more thing to get out of the way. What does science and science-based lifters say about this approach? To put it short, they don't really love it. As I said, this is where battles are fought in the internet fitness community. According to science, the best approach to hypertrophy training is hitting muscles more frequently, that is every 3 to 4 days, with a bit higher volume and consequently more sets per week, while leaving some reps in reserve on the vast majority of those sets. And so we came to the meat of this video. I will start by listing some prerequisites that, in my opinion, anyone who wants to train using the low volume, high intensity approach should meet. Ready, steady, go. Number 1. You have at least a year of actual lifting experience behind you. We are talking about lifting weights here, not 3 months of bodyweight home workouts, then 3 months of street workouts, calisthenics, etc. No, lifting weights. Number 2, and this one is closely tied to the first point. You know how to execute all of your exercises properly with a strict form, you're doing full range of motion, time under tension, and you have established a strong mind and muscle connection on those exercises. Believe me, this is easier said than done. Number 3, you know what failure actually is. I'm not talking about your girlfriend leaving you because apparently she wants more than 3 inches and 4 seconds.
I can fix that.
I'm talking about 0 reps in reserve, RPE 10. Now, if you check these 3 boxes, congratulations, you're ready to suck off Mentzer's boner. literally, and become a HIT gym bro meathead #science is wrong. No, I'm just kidding, but come on, I have to poke fun at those fanboys a bit. But anyway, you've checked these 3 boxes and now you're asking yourself, should I jump on this train and follow this trend? Well, let's put it this way. If you are training however you're training, whether it's low volume, high frequency, reps in reserve, whatever, and it's working for you, don't change anything. Keep doing it. If what works for you isn't high intensity, you can click off this video. Bye bye. Now, let's say that one of the following 2 scenarios happened to you. So, first scenario. For a year or 2, you've been following some basic, kind of science-based program where you've been hitting every muscle group twice per week. You've been doing, let's say, 3 sets per exercise with the intensity of 2 reps in reserve, aka RPE 8. You've made some progress, gained some experience, don't forget about those 3 conditions, but you just feel tired and unmotivated most of the time. Going to the gym 5 or 6 times per week feels like too much. Your body is basically telling you, go harder because she'll never come back. What the fuck, who wrote this script? Your body is basically telling you, just take an extra day or 2 off and see what happens. Second scenario. You've been doing what I just mentioned in the first scenario for a year or 2 and it worked very well, but you've started stagnating in progress. Despite all the deloads and fatigue management techniques, you just feel like you're spinning your wheels in the mud. In these 2 cases, let's take a tool and slowly start adjusting your training plan and sail into low volume, high intensity waters. Does that mean you have to do a full 180 and start doing 3 sets per workout beyond failure screaming 3 times per week? No, I said slowly on purpose. You don't go from your girl barely fingering you to 10-inch straps overnight. You start by adding 1 additional rest day, deleting 1 set from your exercises while raising your RPE to 9 or even 10, aka failure on some sets. Then see how your body responds. Eventually, you will find out what works for you. It could be hitting a certain muscle group every 5 days with 2 sets per exercise, or it could be every 6 days with 1 set done to absolute failure. Fuck around and find out, but fuck around slowly. You're not Mike Mentzer, you're not Dorian Yates, and you're not Ryan Gosling, because that's literally me. My list of pros and cons of high-intensity training. Let's start with pros. It could be more beneficial to larger muscle groups like chest, lats, hamstrings, quads, etc. Why? Because these muscles take longer to recover and usually respond better to heavier loads, so you're not losing much by sacrificing some frequency for intensity here. It's more time efficient for most people because obviously you're spending less time in the gym. So mental fatigue, which is a real thing if you're actually focused and pushing yourself hard, is less likely to occur often. This approach kind of forces you to be 100% focused on your sets and squeeze the most out of them, because you simply don't have many. If you have only 1 set and you half-ass it, you've just blown your only chance to stimulate the given muscle on that exercise. This is why I think a lot of people start to see their best progress following this approach, because they actually start to train with focus and proper form. It's kind of psychological effect. The less you're given, the more you'll take advantage of it. It's like when annoying waitresses at the pub tell me, Matos, for obvious reasons we're only serving you 1 beer and nothing more, you can bet your ass that I'll slowly grab it with a shaky hand and taste every single drop. Bruh. Cons. As much as this approach can be effective for bigger muscle groups, it's kind of the opposite when it comes to smaller muscles like biceps, side delts, rear delts, etc. These muscles recover much faster and therefore benefit more from high frequency training and a bit higher volume. Those small muscles are kinda like our grandmothers. Why were they such good cooks and housewives? Because our grandpas were hitting them more often. Second problem, you don't have enough opportunities to perfect your technique. That's why I wouldn't recommend this approach to beginners. If you hit a certain muscle 2 times per week with 2 to 3 sets per exercise and leave 1 or 2 reps in reserve, you have the perfect chance to master the execution of certain movements. benefits. On the other hand, if your technique is already lacking, which, let's be honest, is the case with the vast majority of gym bros, and you only do one set per exercise every 6 days, sorry, but those science guys are getting better stimulation even though they're leaving a rep or two in reserve. Just something to think about. One last thing, training to failure with very heavy loads and consequently lower reps, that is 5 or 6, on compound exercises like squats that are already pretty fatiguing by themselves will generate tremendous amounts of fatigue, local and systemic. So yes, while the last rep, aka the failure rep on let's say squats, will provide some additional stimulus, it will also generate a disproportionate amount of fatigue at the same time. So don't forget about that, especially if you're a natural lifter. Even more so, if you go all out on this one set of heavy squats, it can negatively impact the next exercises because, as I said, you lose a lot of strength and mental focus. So at the end of the day, a lot of it depends on the individual and their response to certain training approaches. What works best for me, for example, is training every muscle group roughly every 5 days, with 1 or 2 sets per exercise done either to failure or very close to it. That is 1 rep in reserve max. Of course, this depends on the muscle group and the exercise I'm doing for that muscle group. How did I find this G-spot? When she whispered to me, this was the first time I didn't fake it. By analyzing my results and slowly making small adaptations to my training. So the message of this video is, don't be a fanboy, because like I said, you're not Mike Mentzer, you're not Dorian Yates, you are you. Slowly experiment until you find out what works for you. And one last thing, all those guys who trained with high intensity and made it popular had amazing genetics to begin with. Even if Dorian Yates had trained in a more science-based way, his back would still be almost as big as Michelle Obama's. I really hope you like this video. As always, write your opinion and experience in the comments below. Liking and sharing would be great, and see you next time.